I paid for their entire home renovation, and when I asked for the key, my daughter said, "The shed is out back." When I pulled up to the beautiful Victorian house I had spent the last year and the bulk of my life savings restoring, my heart swelled with pride. I had spent $85,000 turning this dilapidated property into a dream home for my daughter Sarah, her husband Mike, and myself. The deal was simple. I would pay for the restoration of the main house and the construction of a luxury ground floor suite for my retirement. In exchange, I would live there rent-free, surrounded by family.
I walked up the porch steps, holding a bottle of champagne to celebrate the completion of the West Wing, my designated suite. Sarah met me at the door, but she didn't step aside to let me in. She stood in the frame, blocking my view. "Dad," she said, her voice tight, the same tone she used when she was a teenager trying to hide a bad grade. "We need to talk about the living arrangements." "What is there to talk about?" I smiled, pointing to the West Wing. "The contractor said the paint is dry. I'm ready to move my boxes in tomorrow." Sarah exchanged a look with Mike, who was hovering behind her, refusing to meet my eyes.
"Actually," Sarah said, smoothing her hair, "Mike and I have been thinking. The West Wing, it's really too modern and spacious for just one person. We've decided to turn it into Mike's home office and a content studio for my blog." I froze. "And where am I supposed to live, Sarah? I sold my condo to pay for this." She forced a bright, fake smile and pointed a manicured finger toward the backyard. "We fixed up the garden cottage. It's rustic, cozy, and gives you plenty of privacy." I walked past her, down the side path to the cottage. It was the old potting shed. They had slapped a coat of white paint on the rotting wood and put a futon inside. There was no insulation, no running water, and a single space heater plugged into an extension cord running from the main house.
"It's charming, isn't it?" Sarah called out from the porch. "Plus, you don't really fit the aesthetic we're going for inside. We're going to be hosting a lot of high-profile friends. You'd be happier here. The main house is for future-forward people." Future-forward people? Those 3 words hit me harder than the sight of the shed. For 2 years, I had been the wallet. I was the one who paid the $4,500 property tax bill when they forgot. I was the one who paid $12,000 for the imported marble countertops Sarah had to have. I was the one who paid the contractor $68,000 in labor costs. I stood in the damp grass, looking at the shed that was meant to be my coffin, and something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet click of a lock turning. "I see," I said calmly. "You're right, Sarah. I probably wouldn't be comfortable in the main house." I got in my truck and drove away. They didn't call to stop me. They probably thought I was going to fetch my suitcase to move into the shed. Instead, I drove straight to the office of Mr. Henderson, the general contractor who had managed the renovation. He was an old friend from my days in the trade. "Arthur," he greeted me, "here to pay the final installment? The kids are loving the new master suite." "Not exactly, Jim," I said, sitting down. "Who signed the contract for the work?" "You did, Art. You're the client." "And who holds the lien on the property until the final payment is cleared?" "Technically, you do. The bank loan for the materials is in your name, secured against the deed because you co-signed the mortgage." "I'm covering it for my house," I replied coldly. "The extras they added last minute." The heated nodded, pulling out my ledger. I had kept every receipt, every text message begging for money, every promise of a luxury suite. "Jim, I want you to send them an invoice for the floors, the skylights, the smart home system, all of it." "But Art, you said you were covering that." "I was. I'm not covering it for future-forward people who put their father in a shed. Send the bill to Sarah and Mike. Immediate payment required. The next morning, my phone exploded. Sarah, 14 missed calls. Dad, Jim sent us a bill for $32,000. He says if we don't pay by Friday, he's putting a lien on the house. Mike, text. Arthur, what is this? We had a deal. You can't do this to family. I didn't reply. I went to a quiet diner, ordered coffee, and called my lawyer, Mrs. Gable. We reviewed the paperwork. Because I had co-signed the mortgage to help them qualify, and because I had poured nearly $100,000 of equity into the renovation, I owned a significant percentage of the home's value. When I didn't answer for 3 days, they showed up at my motel room, but they didn't come alone. They brought a woman with a clipboard. Dad, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face, the same fake tears she used when she wanted a new car in college. We're so worried about you. You're acting erratically, running away, hiding in a motel, threatening us financially. The woman stepped forward. Mr. Miller, I'm from Adult Protective Services. Your daughter has filed a report suggesting you might be suffering from dementia-induced paranoia. She claims you've forgotten your agreement to live in the garden unit and are now financially sabotaging them. My blood ran cold. They were trying to declare me incompetent to invalidate the debts and force me into the shed or a state facility so they could keep the house. Ma'am, I said, standing up straight, I am not confused. I am angry. I invited the caseworker in and laid it all out on the table, the photos of the garden unit, the shed, the receipts, the text messages where Sarah promised me the West Wing, the bank statements showing I had paid for every nail and board in that house. The caseworker looked at the photo of the shed, then at Sarah. Mrs. Jenkins, you wanted your 72-year-old father to live here? In November? It has a heater, Mike blurted out. It has no plumbing, I corrected. And I paid for the marble shower you two are using right now. The caseworker closed her file. Mr. Miller, you seem perfectly oriented to me. In fact, I'd suggest you get a restraining order against these two for elder abuse. The look on Sarah's face wasn't shame. It was panic. The narrative was crumbling. The following week, Mrs. Gable served them the papers. I wasn't just asking for the $32,000 back. I was forcing a partition sale. Since I owned 60% of the equity due to my massive down payment and renovation contributions, I had the right to force the sale of the home to recoup my investment. You can't sell our house, Sarah screamed at me in the lawyer's conference room. It's our dream home. My blog followers think I own it. It was a dream home, I said, sliding the photo of the shed across the mahogany table. But you decided I didn't fit the aesthetic. Now you can buy me out for $145,000, my initial investment plus the renovation costs, or the house goes on the market next Monday. They didn't have $145,000. They didn't even have the $32,000 for the contractor. They had spent everything on furniture and branding for their image. The house was sold 3 months later. I took my share of the proceeds, which, after the market appreciation from the renovation I paid for, was a healthy sum. And I didn't buy a condo. I bought an RV. I spent the next 2 years driving through the national parks, fishing in Montana, and watching sunsets in Arizona. I met a group of fellow travelers, nomads like me. We look out for each other. We share meals. We share stories. Last I heard, Sarah and Mike are living in a 2-bedroom rental apartment. Mike had to go back to a 9-to-5 job because they couldn't afford their influencer lifestyle without my subsidies. Sarah tried to reach out last Christmas. She sent a picture of a sonogram. You're going to be a grandpa, the text read. Don't you want to build a nursery? I looked at the text, then looked out at the Grand Canyon stretching before me, vast and free. I replied, I'm sure you can find a lovely shed for the baby. I'm busy living my life.